gunfire down below. I was east of Metz, and the Germans still held Metz. I get on the ground, I hid under a bush. A German half-track pulled into the field, and two soldiers with rifles were looking for me. I thought, well, they know I'm here, so I stood up and put my hand up. Got halfway there, and I noticed that over the German Iron Cross was a crudely painted white star, and they were a captured vehicle, and they were part of Patton's Third Army, and they were 40 miles ahead of where people thought they were, and so I got a ride with them. And the next day they flew me back by a Cub observation plane to my base.
Even though the liquid-cooled engine was a drawback when the 51s were used to hit ground targets, the Mustang was still considered to be the best mass-produced fighter of the war, and some would argue, of all time. Near the end of World War II, the Mustang's apex of success had been reached. But even at this pinnacle, the shadows of its own downfall could be seen on the horizon.
With the advent of the Messerschmitt 262, the first operational jet fighter, the Germans had really dealt the death blow to the piston engine fighter design. And while the Messerschmitt 262 really represented the future, the pilots flying the older designs, the Mustangs, really figured out in the final days of the war how best to fight their aircraft against this new technological marvel. And so on many occasions, the Mustang pilots actually came out on top, despite the Messerschmitt 262's amazing speed.
On this particular day, in April '45, I was on a search and destroy mission. I was at 12,000 feet with 4 planes. I spotted movement down below me, and I recognized the silhouette of a Messerschmitt 262 jet, and I had 10,000 feet altitude. He was at 2. So I rolled over. I was determined he wasn't going to get away from me, so I beat Chuck Yeager through the sound barrier. I thought the airplane was coming apart. I went into what's called compressibility, lost complete control of the aircraft. It felt like the control stick had become unhooked. It was all over the cockpit and nothing happened. And, as I'm going down to lower altitude, the thicker the air got, the more I began to feel something on the stick. I prayed for it to be there, and I began to ease out, and I came out, and would you believe the 262 was right square in front of me. I don't think I moved 2 degrees before I started shooting. And I shot a piece of one wing off and shot the left jet on, set the left jet on fire. And I was overrunning him, so I pulled off and was going to come back, but by the time I pulled off, he was going straight up. P-51s won't go straight up very long. I tried to go after him, but he was going straight up, and I thought I'd lost him. One jet was burning, and all of a sudden he stopped and started sliding back down, tail first, and he ejected and hung in his parachute. And I felt like the champion of the world. I was ecstatic. In 1996, I think it was, I went to the German fighter pilots meeting and met the pilot I shot down. He and his wife both gave me a big hug. He says, "You saved my life." He says, "I had 25 pilots in my unit when you shot me down," and he said he had a bullet wound in his left side, so he never had to fly again. And because of that, he said 3 weeks later, there were only 4 of my unit alive, and he said, "So you saved my life." So I said, "No problem, buddy, anytime."
When the war ended, the new jet fighters, like the P-80 and F-86, soon eclipsed the Mustang as America's premier air superiority fighter. But for a fleeting moment, the P-51 had become a king of the skies. But all too soon, the march of technology had bumped it from its throne. Within just a few years of the war's end, the Mustang had been relegated to second-line status. Altogether, about 15,000 P-51s had been built, but thousands were scrapped wholesale in the months following the end of the war. Others, a precious few, were sold off to racing pilots and enthusiasts. During the first year of the Korean War, the Mustang reclaimed a bit of its lost glory as it was pressed back into service as a ground attack aircraft. But with its vulnerable liquid-cooled engine, the P-51 was replaced as quickly as possible with more modern jet aircraft. Today, the once mighty horde of Mustangs that conquered the skies of Europe has been reduced to less than 100 flying examples. Every year at air shows throughout the United States, these precious relics take to the air before crowds of thousands, reminding Americans of our proud aviation heritage and those grueling days when Mustangs filled the skies in a desperate fight for freedom.
Never had anybody say they didn't want to fly. In fact, it was just the other way around. People hanging on my back saying, "Come on, he flew yesterday. I want to put me on today." Does that mean it was fun? No, it's dead serious. We did every job we were given the entire war and did them well. It cost us a lot of people. It was another way you proved that what Sherman said was right, that war is hell, and it is.